Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Laura Bunn, and I'm an Education USA advisor at the Education USA Pukerio office. Today we're here with Erin Basco from the University of Lynchburg, and we're going to be discussing the big 6 steps for success at the University of Lynchburg. So that'll include academic life, social life, campus resources, the best way to adapt to life in the US. And I'm really looking forward to hearing more. So I'll pass it over to you, Erin. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Laura. I appreciate it. Yeah, I think we have an interesting topic for today, a little bit different. I think a lot of times maybe you get more information on, recruitment processes and the application process to the U.S., but maybe not as much about how to be successful when you get there. So wanted to provide a little bit of that, to give you a little bit of data on what can be helpful to you and some suggestions about how to make the most of your arrival and make sure that you're finding success where you go. So I called this 6 steps to college success, and you'll see why in a few minutes. Before I dive into the topical piece, I'll do a quick commercial, I guess, for the University of Lynchburg, where I work, just to give you a couple of highlights so that you have an idea of the environment that I'm in and what we do with international students. So the University of Lynchburg is located in the state of Virginia. We are about 3 hours away from Washington, D.C., the capital of the U.S. It's a great town, a great college town. We actually have 5 different colleges and universities that are in our area, so it's known as one of the best college towns in the country. And there's a lot to do. We have a lot of international students that come to us. We're about 3,000 students altogether, and we've got probably 225 to 250 international students on campus right now from lots of different places, and particularly from Latin America. We have a lot of students that come from Latin America. So I think we're a pretty warm and welcoming place to do that. So you can see, again, we have about 20 countries represented, 47 states, about 3,000 total students, small class sizes, which I think is great for helping students to be able to make connections and get the very best experience possible. Academically, we have 100 different majors and minors that students work with. We're pretty famous for hands-on learning, where we build into really every opportunity that we have. Every major and program has some kind of practical element to it. So if you come to us and you want to study business, you'll probably work with our student managed investment portfolio, where we have about $1 million in actual funding that students use to buy and sell real stocks with. And we have a wonderful, for example, criminology program, and students take a course in crime scene management, where they learn to actually look for clues and cordon off areas for crime scenes and do all kinds of mock crime scene work. So things like that. We have, if you're interested in biology and medicine, we have our own undergraduate cadaver lab that students can work with, which is real bodies and also digitally. So we have lots of opportunities for students to really practice and be able to do what it is they're learning. And we have some good pathways onto our graduate programs as well. As I mentioned, we're a very diverse campus, lots and lots of clubs and activities, and I'll talk more about why that's important in a little bit. But you can see here a little bit of the many variety of things that go on campus. So it's a different experience. And then for those of you interested in sports, we have a long list of sports that we actively recruit for. We're Division III, but very competitive. So in case that is of interest. I can talk a little bit later, but one of the things I think we do really well, we work closely with students and we give very good scholarships. So this upcoming year, our top scholarship for international students will be about $30,000. So I think that helps to make it more affordable for students to come. And again, we've got some good recognition. I think the most interesting thing is that we are one of the original 40 colleges that change lives. So we are very well known for impacting the lives of our students and helping them to really develop to the next level. Okay, so with that commercial done, if you have more questions for me later about the university, I'm happy to do that, and I'll provide my contact information for you. But I wanted to talk today about a little bit about success and what that means and what you're hoping to get from your education, what you're hoping that it'll provide for you, and what some of those common definitions of success are, and how you can be more likely to reach that definition of success. So I think when we think of success, especially as it relates to a university experience, we all kind of have similar outcomes, right, that we have in mind. Obviously, if I was to make everybody raise their hand and I said, how many of you are hoping that if you go to the university, it will get you a better job, that you will make more money, right? everybody's going to raise their hand, right? If I say, how many of you are hoping that your experience here will help you grow as a person and have more opportunities in life and be happier with the work you do? Everybody's going to raise their hand, right? If I asked, parents and I said, how many of you are hoping that this is going to let your student like stand on their own 2 feet and not live with you forever? All the parents would raise their hands, right? So we all have, I think, a pretty similar definition of what success looks like. You want to get a great degree, you want to go on to good things and be happy in your life. And the university also wants you to do really well, right? We want you to succeed. We want you to go on, become famous, and that helps us too. That's good for us. Continue to support the university in the future. So we all have these ideas of success that I think are shared. The question is, how do you get there, right? And are there ways for us to make it more likely that you'll achieve that kind of success when you have a university experience? Well, I think one interesting way to look at that is to think about the idea of well-being for a person, right? Because your success is more than just money, right? Money is a factor, but it's not the only factor. These other areas also contribute to you being happy as a person, you being satisfied, and you having a great experience that is a worthwhile investment. So we talk about different areas of well-being, like purpose, having a sense that what you do matters. Social well-being, being connected with other people, having people in your life that encourage you, community well-being, right? Do you have a place where you feel like you belong? Do you like where you live? Those kinds of things. Financial well-being, obviously, we've talked about this already, but we'll continue to talk about it, right? You have the money that you need to have a decent life, and you don't have to worry about money every day. And then physical well-being, right? Do you feel healthy? Do you feel like you're in good shape? You get exercise, those kinds of things. So these are all helpful ways for us to be able to think about, what it means to be successful. So part of the question is, will a university degree and a university experience get you closer to these things, right? Will that be more, useful and predictive of you having a long-term fulfilling life? The good news is, yes. The good news is, if you look at the research, all the predictions are that if you get a university degree, you're more likely to do well in all of these areas, right? You're more likely to financially be well off, to have a sense of well-being, to enjoy the work that you do, to have better social connections. All those kinds of things go along or correlated with having a university education. So it's incredibly helpful. It's probably the best investment you can make in yourself, right? Is to go on and get more education. And this can lead to an overall a better life. Obviously, the thing that I think people think about first is the financial aspect of that, right? So I wanted to point out a couple of things on the financial perspective that I think are helpful. One that's really interesting that I think sometimes people don't think about is that it helps you to be resilient as a person. The more education you have, it helps you with financial resilience, right? So we all know that there are times when the markets are better and times when they're not as good, right? There are times when the economy is strong and there are times when it isn't. What the research shows is that students who go on and get a university level degree have more resilience. So in good markets, they do well. In bad markets, they do better than if they didn't have a degree, right? They're less badly impacted by negative economic circumstances. So this is a major factor and something that's an excellent benefit of going on to education that a lot of people don't think about. Obviously, there's an income difference, right? This is obviously data from the United States, but for students who get a U.S. degree, looking at their eventual income over a lifetime, getting a degree makes a big difference in terms of the average amount of income that someone makes over their lifetime. So, just from that perspective as well, it's a good investment. It's one of the best investments that you can make is to go on and get your degree and utilize it to help you secure a good financial future. So I don't know if anybody knows Malcolm Gladwell, is a Malcolm Gladwell fan. He's kind of an interesting character. He's a bit of a futurist. He's this brilliant person, and he loves to look at ideas that are like people think they're true, but they're not true, right? Like he does a whole podcast called Revisionist History, where he explores things that we assume to be true, but that the research actually tells you are not true. So he wrote this book called David and Goliath, and it has a whole chapter that's dedicated to going to university in the US. And I think what the most interesting conclusion that he draws from the research is that the most important thing for students if they want to be successful is actually to figure out how to be a big fish wherever you go, right? What does that mean? Well, the research that he did showed that the myth is that you only have a good outcome if you go to a highly selective university, right? You go to a place that everybody's heard of, you go to a place that's really hard to get into, that those students get the best experience. But what he found was that's not necessarily true. What he found was that the students in the top third of their school, no matter what kind of school it was, if it was a highly selective institution, if it was a moderately selective institution, if it was a not selective institution, if you were in the top third of your school group, you were most likely to be successful in the long term in life. But if you were in the bottom third, even if you were in the most prestigious school, you were less likely to be successful. And the conclusions that he drew were really two things, right? Number one, there's something about being successful that gives you confidence and helps to open new doors for you, right? So the more that you feel like you're being successful, the more successful you are. And the other thing that he indicated was that when you go to maybe a less known school and you're one of the top students, you have all the best resources that are available to you, right? You get opportunities to do research, you get to work with faculty more, you get to, work with like our kinds of, I talked about the cadaver lab and, honors and those kinds of things are all opportunities that you have access to because you're a top student. So his research indicated that that's really what you want to do. It's not about finding the biggest name. It's about finding the best fit for you, right? It's about going to the place where you're going to be a star student. So I think that's important for us to keep in mind as we look at success, to know that that's what you're looking for is a good match. Okay, so let's think about data. Is there a way that if we know you want to go on and be successful in all these different areas and all these different ways, right, that you want these kinds of well-being, is there a way for us to guarantee you that opportunity, right? Or pretty close, right? To be highly predictive that you're going to have a successful outcome in college and then a successful outcome in life. So there's an organization called the Gallup organization, and they teamed up with Purdue University, and they did this huge study called the Gallup Purdue Index. And it surveyed about 300,000 students and recent graduates and asked them what experiences they had and how satisfied they were with their lives. And they wanted to know if they could predict, based on certain experiences, whether people would be satisfied with the lives that they had, whether they would be successful and have well-being and that kind of thing. So what do you think? Did they find something? Yes, they found something, which is a good thing for this talk, right? So that's good because I have something to share with you. But yes, they found that there were actually 6 practices that if students had these 6 practices, they were way more likely to be satisfied with their lives, to be financially successful, healthy, happy, engaged, those kinds of things, right? So what were the 6 practices? Well, here they are. Number 1 was a professor who made them excited about learning. Number 2 was a professor who cared about them as individuals. Number 3 was a mentor who pushed them to achieve their goals. 4 was working on a long-term project. 5 was completing a job or internship. And 6 was being engaged in extracurricular activities. So these 6 practices were highly predictive of students having that great outcome that we've been talking about. So the interesting thing, though, is that the more of these practices you had, the more likely you are to be successful, right? If you had 1, you were somewhat likely, but if you had 5 or 6, you were way more likely to be satisfied with your outcome. But the big problem that they found was only 3% of students responded that they had had all 6 experiences while they were within the university, which is very low, right? So if you think about it, right, when you talk to people and hear about their experiences in universities, right, oftentimes it's people go and they're, in this giant classroom and they're being presented to by a faculty member way away from them. And they don't have that maybe professor who makes them really excited. They don't have that mentor. They don't have opportunities to do, internships. So again, it really points to this idea that you're looking for an environment that is going to help you in these ways, right? It's going to give you support. It's going to help you to connect with people, and it's going to help you to have these great long-term experiences that keep you engaged and help you really discover who you are. Okay. So now that we know what this is, right? 6, I don't know, maybe 6 isn't too bad for you, but I think what I found as I continued to do research in this area when you think about it, these 6 experiences, if you look at them overall, they actually go into 2 groups, right? If you look at the first 3 experiences, right, these were a professor who made you excited to learn, a professor who cares about you, and a mentor who pushes you, right? How are they all similar, right? They're all similar because you're talking about a person or people who have your back, a person or people who are there for you, who, when you run into trouble, you can get support, they can help understand you, they can help you process things and learn and figure out what you want to do with your life a little bit, right? And then when you look at the second set, it's all about doing something meaningful, right? It's a long-term project, a job or internship, extracurricular activities, and ways to be involved. So when you break it down this way, you're really only looking for 2 types of experiences that are going to be those really impactful practices that will help lead you to long-term success, right? So when you go to a university experience, you want to do this. You want to find people who will be your support network, who will be your backers, right? And then you want to make sure you're finding opportunities to connect and do things in meaningful ways. Okay, so what does this look like in terms of being at a university? Well, if we start with the idea of connecting with a person or people on your campus, there are lots of ways that places can do this, right? So some of the ways that we as a university try to help students make sure that they get connected, our faculty offer office hours, right, where you can go and talk to a faculty member and learn more, or figure out who they are. They can give you advice on your career or your life. You can meet with an advisor who can help you in the same way, right, guide you a little bit in what you're doing. You can chat with your RA, right, your resident assistant who is in your dormitory, and you can, learn more about what their experience is like, and they can help guide you. There are student leadership organizations that you can be a part of. You can go to the departmental office, right? There are all these different layers of support that you have that you can connect with these people who can guide you, and they can help you make sense out of your university experience, and they can help you to guide you towards a better life. So this is sort of like step 1, right? Is finding those people who can really support you and back you in what you're doing. And this goes along with opportunities for extracurricular activities, right? What I typically find first is that when new students start with the university, whether they're coming from the US or they're coming internationally, the first place that they find that they belong is in some type of activity, right? Some type of, social opportunity that happens on campus. And the nice thing is that the US educational system is really well set up for this, right? So where you are in Brazil, most of the time, and in other countries as well, most of the time, when you go to university, you just do university, right? You just study in that place. But all of your activities are sort of outside that, right? You have clubs that you belong to, or you do training for a sport that you're in, or you get together with friends or whatever else, but that's all outside the university. Where in the US, most students come to us and they live on campus, and they have their activities are on campus. We provide all kinds of social networking opportunities, clubs, activities, religious organizations, sports programs, club sports programs, opportunities for work, all these kinds of things that are inside the experience themselves. So we're really well set up to give you that sense of belonging, that you belong to this place, that it's a good place for you to be, that you can be healthy and happy while you're with us on campus. So I think that can be really helpful for students, right? Is to easily find a place where they belong. But what happens that I find fascinating is over time, what you want from your experience changes a little bit, right? So you might come to us in your first year as a student in the US and you want to belong, right? You're worried, like, I need to meet friends, I need to find people, I need to connect, I just want to feel comfortable. But after a year or two, you start feeling really comfortable. You feel like you've, figured out who your friends are, who your people are. And I see this over and over again that students then start to say, okay, now how can I make a difference, right? How can I have an impact on something else? Yes, I belong, I feel comfortable, but now I want to do something that people are going to recognize. So they start to take on these extra activities. They start to maybe do an internship, right? Or they want to do some research in their specific area. Sometimes they'll study abroad, or they'll publish, or get involved in a leadership opportunity or the honors program, right? And these are all opportunities for students to not just be comfortable, but to then move forward and to start really adding value to their degree. And again, usually this happens after a year or two being with us on campus. You start to say, okay, what else can I do? What else can I do? How can I be a leader, right? And we provide many, many opportunities for you to do this. So again, that finding a place where you can be a big fish, where you can be a star with us, I think really matters, right? Because you're going to have access to all of these types of activities. Okay. I'll make this a little personal here. So this is kind of fun. I don't know how many folks we have in the session right now, but I'm guessing you can figure out who the person is on the left, right? I'm the person on the right, and the person on the left is my son. So no big surprise, probably. Everybody says he looks kind of like me, only with more hair. So this is my son. You can see we're at an amusement park. He's a big fan of amusement parks and roller coasters. So I have an interesting story with my son about going to university. So he started at the university a few years ago in the first semester after COVID. Right. So he went off and he went away to school about 7 or 8 hours away from where I live. And he, had to go there and we didn't know what was going to happen. We thought, okay, is he going to stay? Is he going to need to come back? Is this going to work? How is this going to happen? Right. So he had a good year. Everything went fine. He went on. He got his degree. He's now working in communications. He works at a radio station. He's doing great. But I asked him about that. Like I said, that first year, how was that for you? And he said, it was really hard. He said, I didn't know what was going to happen. I had never done this before. I'd never been to university before. And now we had all this extra stuff going on and I wasn't really sure. And I said, well, what made the difference? And he said, well, two things. He said, number one, I had a really good resident assistant who really helped me, who I could ask questions and, figure out things and just talk to anytime I needed to. And number two, I got involved in the intramural volleyball team. And I was thinking, intramural volleyball, what does that have to do with anything, right? But what I realized was after talking to him, I went back to my research that I had been doing and I thought, wait a minute, he just told me that he found a person who was his support person, right? Just like we talked about, finding somebody who had their back, and that he found an activity where he felt like he belonged, right? So he just showed me in his one case that it's absolutely true, right? That those are the two clear things that all students need to find in order to be successful in their university career and that lead them to long-term success, right? He had great experiences when he did two internships when he was part of this. He went to a small school. He got to know his faculty members really well. His faculty members helped him get jobs as he was leaving. They really connected with him. He's still in touch with them. So he is like perfect proof of what we're talking about, right? That knowing people, connecting, being in an environment where he was a big fish made a big difference for him in terms of his long-term progression and his career. Okay, so how does this relate to you specifically as you're starting on your college search, or maybe you're part way into your university search, right? It depends on how far along you are, what year you are, those kinds of things. I think it talks a lot about what you should look for in the place that you go, right? Again, I think a lot of times people make the mistake. They say, okay, I'll just look for the most famous places, right? That everybody's heard of. Well, first of all, those famous places are really hard to get into, right? Some of them have a 5% or a 7% admission rate. So getting into them is very difficult. But number two, they may not always be the best fit because they have so many wonderful students that to many of them, you're just going to be another student, right? You're not going to be anything special. And I think looking for a place that will treat you like you're somebody special is a big deal, right? It matters find someplace that's a good match for you and wants to really invest in you is a big deal. So how can you see that as you move forward, right? Well, what should you look for? Well, you can look for experiential learning in programs, right? This is something that I told you that the University of Lynchburg is very strong at, right? We don't want you to just listen to a lecture. We don't want you to just read a textbook. We want you to actually know how to do things, right? So I can give you a great example of this. I have, so my son is my oldest, and my youngest is a daughter. And she just graduated in May from the University of Lynchburg. She attended there, even though her dad works there. She still somehow put up with that. And she even hugged me on campus one time, which was great. So, but anyway, so she attended there and she did really well. She wasn't sure what she wanted to do for her major. And I can tell you a little bit more about that story. But she ended up doing graphic design as a major, which has been great. but they made her do all kinds of projects, right? She got involved in a logo competition for local businesses where she was designing logos, and her logo won part of the competition, one of the awards, and one of the businesses actually uses her logo now, right? She had to, for her final project, design a company, right? And all of their logos and their print work and their website and t-shirts and cups and all kinds of stuff that she had to design for them. And now, because she graduated from that program, she's doing web page design. She's doing social media work for other companies because she knows how to do all those things as part of what she does. So looking for places that will give you that type of experiential learning is a great thing, right? That's something that will really be very valuable to you as you go on into the job market. You want to be in places where, they're going to look for the kinds of skills that you have already been able to practice. Number two, I would say look for a place that has layers of support, right? What happens when I need help? See, I think one of the things that I always joke with students about is I say, when you think about going to university, you picture in your head a certain way, right? You picture you're going to go there, it's going to be sunny every day. You're going to love all the food in the dining hall is going to be perfect. You're going to have the best roommate ever. You're going to have only the best faculty members that you're going to like all of them. It's going to be perfect, right? So, but what are the chances that that's going to happen, right? Some days are going to be rainy. Sometimes you're going to have to fight with your roommate. Sometimes you're not going to like a class that you're in, right? All of those things are totally normal. So the question is not how do I prevent those things from happening? The question is, what do I do when they do happen, right? Who do I go to? Who do I talk with? Who can help me to kind of get things figured out, right? And so you want to look for places that do that, that say, okay, here's an advisor that you can work with. Our faculty members are set up to be able to help you. We have RAs in all the residence halls that can help you as well, right? Counselors, people who are there for you. So ask about that, right? Say, okay, when I go there and the first time that I need help, who do I go to, right? Who's going to support me? I think that's super important. And then I think the third thing is really to look for ways to get involved, right? When you go, what are you going to do other than study, right? And it needs to be something other than play PlayStation, right, in your dorm room, right? It's got to be something interesting, right? So we have all these kinds of clubs, right? We have a super outdoor club, for example, right? So I work with a lot of students from Latin America, and I've had some of my international students come up to me and be like, we went rafting this last weekend. It was awesome. I've never been rafting before. It was really cool, right? Or they go and they trek in the mountains, or they do rock climbing, or they go camping, or they, all kinds of, crazy things that students enjoy doing. The cool thing is they meet people, right? Because one of the things you need to know as an international student, most of the time in a lot of other countries, you've probably gone to school with the same people for years, right? Usually what happens is you're in like a little cohort of students, maybe since the time you were in first grade, right? And you've been with those same students in your cohort. US students don't do that. US students are mixed and mingled, right? They go from classes into another and they meet different people and whatever else. So they don't have that strong sense of cohort sometimes. So what American students do in order to meet people is they join clubs, right? They go and they say, I'm interested in this and I'm going to try that club out. And so whenever I talk to international students and they're not sure how to make friends, I tell them the most important thing you can do is go and join clubs, right? And I think sometimes they feel like, oh no, if I sign myself up, I'm going to be committed. It doesn't work that way. You can go, you can sign up for every club on campus and go to the first meeting. And if you don't like it, no one cares if you don't go to the second meeting, right? It's totally fine. It's totally accepted. But if you go and you like it, you're going to meet people, you're going to make friends, you're going to meet people who will invite you to their house for holiday breaks, right? You're going to meet people who will share rides with you when you need one. It's going to help you so much to do that. So when you go to the university, definitely get involved in clubs and activities because that's the normal way that US students interact with each other. And that'll help you make a lot more US friends. Okay. I talked a little bit about how once students get rolling in their university careers, they usually want to do something extra, right? They start to think about what else can I do to make my experience more valuable. So look for these kinds of things as well, right? Think about, can you get an internship? Most of our students will do an internship while they're with us, and we have a great career services area that connects you with internships that you want to do. If you come as an international student, you'll usually have either 1 year or 3 years of optional practical training that you can do afterwards, where you can stay in the United States, get connected with a company and work for them and get experience, right? And get paid, which is nice too, but also get great experience that you can bring with you. So we want to help you early on think about, how do I get an internship so that will later help me get a good job, right? There are also, like I said, there are things like independent study, there are things like honors programs, student research, all these activities that the more of these you do, the better your resume is going to be, the more skills you're going to have, and the more easily you're going to be able to network and get out there and, make great choices. So there's an extra bonus to all this, right? We've talked about all the things that you want to make sure that you have, right? Experiential learning. We've talked about all the things that help you, finding people who have your back, getting involved, those kinds of things. The extra bonus in all of this is these are also the things that employers are interested in, right? When you survey employers and you say, what do you want in students? They will say things like, we want students who have done internships and have practical experience, or maybe have done research. We want people who have had an on-campus job or have volunteered or been involved in leadership activities, right? These are all things that employers highly value. So by having these experiences, not only are you likely to learn more, get a great outcome, but you're more likely to be impressive to the employers that are out there that are looking to hire people. So it's a bonus, it's a win-win all around. So again, these are the kinds of experiences that you want to make sure to have. Okay. So again, I've talked a little bit about like what those experiences are, right? We've talked about what do you want to make sure that you have while you're in college? What is going to be most predictive for you of success? We've talked about how to get those, right? A little bit, what kinds of places. We've talked about the idea of being a big fish in a small pond, right? Or whatever size pond you're in, that you want to be one of the best students in there so that you can get access to the most opportunities, right? So think about that as you research. What else can you do, right? Or what, I guess in summary, if I had to give you like a short list of really concrete bullets that you want to do when you're getting to the university, right? You've got your I-20, you've gone through your interview, you got your visa, you've got your plane ticket, you show up on campus, you're there for international orientation. What things do you need to do? This is my quick, essential list of things, okay? Number one, you want to keep track of your credits, right? So this is usually this is a concept that most other countries don't have. The US has this concept of credits. Every course that you take is worth a certain number of credits, right? This is very different than most other systems. Most systems, there's a set of courses that you take and you just start at the beginning and you go to the end, right? In the US, you have a lot of choices about the courses that you take, but you need to get to a certain number in order to graduate. If you don't get the right number, you won't graduate on time. It'll take you longer. Instead of going 4 years, you'll have to go 4.5 years or 5 years, which you don't want to do, and your parents definitely don't want you to do, right? Because they don't want to pay for an extra year. So you want to make sure you stay on track. So I always try to explain the concept of credits so that it's easy for international students to understand as something that's really unusual. So think about it this way. This is a little bit about like the technical definition, but a credit is basically you get 1 credit for every 1 hour that you spend in the classroom per week, right? So if I take, it's pretty normal to take 5 classes, right? Let's say I go to University of Lynchburg and I take 5 classes my first semester. On Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I have 3 classes for an hour each, right? So I've now done Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 3 classes, 1 hour each. That's 3 credits each of those days, right? So each hour that I'm in the classroom is equal to 1 credit. So I get 3 credits, 3 credits, and 3 credits, right? So I'm up at 9 credits. And then on Tuesday and Thursday, I take 2 more classes, but those are an hour and a half long instead of an hour long, right? So now I've got like a credit and a half and a credit and a half. So that's another 3 credits on each of those days. So it's another 6 credits for a total of 15 credits, right? So think about it like this. For every hour that you spend per week in class, you get 1 credit. So what you want to make sure that you do is look at the total number of credits that you need, right? So for example, University of Lynchburg, you need 120 credits to graduate with an undergraduate degree. If you break that down, that would be 15 credit hours per semester on average, right? Most of your classes are going to be 3 credit classes. Occasionally, you'll have one that's 4 because you have a laboratory science or something like that, or an art class or something that's got something specific. Or you might have a couple of 1 credit courses, like for an orientation class or a gym class or something like that. But for the most part, you're looking at about 15 credits per semester. So I hope that helps a little bit. When you hear credits, you're going to know what people are talking about because they're going to assume and you won't know. So, number 1, understand credits and be on track with that. Number 2, ask who has your back, right? Maybe this is your international admissions counselor. Maybe this is somebody in the international office. Maybe this is your advisor. Maybe this is a favorite faculty member, an orientation leader. But find somebody who you know who can support you. And I would say this shouldn't be another student of your age, right? You don't want to go in and be like, oh, okay, when I have a question about how the university works, I'm going to ask Fulano who's sitting over here next to me, right? Like, because they're going to give you the wrong answer, right? Because they don't know any more than you do. They're brand new. So that can't be your person. You need to find a person who is a little bit more experienced. This happens to me all the time, right? Students come in and they, say, I don't know what to do. I have this problem. I don't know. And I'm like, okay, sit down, whatever else. For those of you who are in the southern part of the country, maybe I pull out the mate and I make them drink some mate and I say, okay, just relax. Let's talk through this, right? So we help them figure out, what it is that they need and we get them sorted out. So you want to make sure you have at least one person and maybe more that have your back. Figure out where you feel like you belong. So number 3 is to say, okay, who are my people on campus? If you're a sports player, maybe it's your sports team. If you are an artistic person, maybe it's a group of art students, right? Or an art club or something like that. But find the people who are going to help you feel like you belong and that you're in a good, comfortable place. This won't happen right away, but find a long-term project or be thinking about what kind of long-term project you might be interested in. Is it going to be research? Maybe you're in the sciences, right? Is it going to be something you design? Do you want to, build your own app? Do you want to, do a specific research study? Are you trying to write a great novel? What is it that you want to work on long-term that you hope to get out of your university experience? And then the last thing that I would say is to go and see your career services office. So in a lot of other countries, you don't have exactly this equivalent, but at US universities, there is a whole office dedicated to helping students find jobs, right? And develop their understanding of who they are and what they want to study and those kinds of things. This is the career office. I would recommend to all international students, probably in the first semester, that you go and at least check into the career office. Introduce yourself, learn about what their services are, help them figure out, because you probably will need a little extra help, right? I think it's a little easier for domestic students in the US to figure out how to get internships because they probably have an uncle or an aunt or somebody who, has a place where they can go and get an internship, right? Or they know somebody who knows somebody already. So it's a little easier. You may not have those connections. And so for you, knowing the career services people is more important. They'll help you figure out what major you want to do. They'll help you figure out where you can get support. It's really very helpful. So again, go to the career and professionalism area of your campus. Ask them, if you haven't found a person to be your special backing person, ask them who that could be. Maybe it's one of them, or they can help you find somebody. If you need a mentor, ask them how to find one. They can do assessments to make sure you're in the right career, right? This is a wonderful thing about the US educational system is there's so much flexibility in terms of your career, right? Many of you, if you were going to university in your home country, in Brazil in this case, you've got one chance to make a choice, right? You say, I'm going to be an engineer. And if you don't, you go a year or two and you decide you don't want to be an engineer, you probably have to start over, right? In a whole nother career and lose all that time and money and whatever else. In the US, that's not the case. In the US, you can come in the first year, you can take courses from this, you can take courses from that, you can check some things out and then say, okay, I actually don't want to be an engineer. I actually really want to be a biologist, right? You can do that with us. So that's a great thing that they can help you do by helping you with some assessments and figuring out, what's really a great fit for you. And they will always help you do it with the idea in mind of what is an employer going to think, right? They'll always be thinking with this idea of make choices that will help make you more marketable to get a great job, which is a wonderful asset to have, is somebody who's helping you think about things in that way. Okay. So those are the kind of big pieces that I have for you. I want to take a minute because I am very much like a career orientation person. Like I've done a lot of that. I've taught a lot, that kind of thing. Just for fun, I want to share with you a couple of little activities that we'll do. And I don't know how many people are on this. If they want to, put something in the notes, you're welcome to. We can do something in the chat. But two things that I love to share with students that I think can be really helpful as they are thinking about making sure that what they think they want to do is what they really want to do, right? And making sure that they start to construct the kind of life that they really want to have. So here goes my challenge, right? This is what I'm going to pitch to you as an idea for what you can do to kind of help make sure you're doing the things with your life that you should be doing with your life. Okay, number one, I want you to think back to a time when you were younger. I want you to think back to when you were 5, 6, 7 years old, right around this time period, right? What I want you to think about are, do you remember your parents telling funny stories about what you used to do when you were at this age? Unusual things that you used to do when you were this age, things that seemed strange, right, to them, or they were surprised by. Maybe they're even things that you used to get in trouble for, right? What kinds of things did you get in trouble for? So let me give you a couple of examples from my life. So when I was in second grade, I got a C in conduct, which basically meant I wasn't behaving well in some way. My parents were super surprised about this, right? They were like, "You're such a nice kid. I don't get it." So they went in to talk to my teacher, and my teacher said, "He is a nice kid. The problem is he finishes his homework and then he goes around and tries to help everybody else finish their homework." And it's really disruptive. And they were like, "Oh, yep, that's him, right? That's what he does." And so you have these patterns, right? When I was about 8 years old, we went on a family trip. We were on an airplane. I sat down next to a person who spoke mostly Spanish. And when I got off the plane, my parents said I could count to 100 in Spanish, and I knew about 20 other words that I didn't know any Spanish when I got on the plane, right? These are just the things that are strange about you as a kid. So think about those things that you used to do and what they might say about you. Because what's happening is as you develop as a person, you don't change a lot as a person, but you start out and you develop one or two really strong strengths when you're young, and then you add other strengths to it as you go along that round you out, right? But those first couple of things, those are always your strongest. So if you were somebody who was really bossy when you were little, right? Maybe you're going to be a great leader. If you're somebody who liked to argue, right, all the time, maybe you're going to be a good lawyer, right? If you were somebody who loved to pull things apart and put them back together, maybe you'll be an engineer or a scientist or who knows, right? But think about those things that you used to get into trouble for and how they could be pointing you towards what it is that you should be doing. Okay. And lastly, I want to give you my very favorite exercise, which is called the 3 movies exercise. So most people like movies and have probably favorite movies. I want you to think about 3 or 4 favorite movies that you have that maybe you've watched many times that stick out to you that you just like, oh yes, I love that movie. It really resonates with me, right? I want you to think about those movies and I want you to think about the plot line, right? What is the movie about? If you had to sum the movie up in just a few lines, what would it say to you, right? What story would it tell? What I typically find in working with students is that when you do a resume of that movie, usually your favorite movies, if you put them together, almost always have the same story, right? So let me give you an example, right? From my experience, I have a few favorite movies. I love the Lord of the Rings movies, right? It's probably some of you have seen those. The Matrix is one of my favorites, right? And there's a movie called The Last Samurai. When I look at all of those movies, they all have the same plot. They start out with somebody who doesn't think they are a hero, right? That undiscovered hero bumps into a mentor character who helps them get trained and figure things out and become great at stuff. And then they go on and they save the world, right? All of those movies have the same plot line. And what I find is that usually when people look at their movies, the movies that resonate with you tell you something about what you should be doing. And the most fascinating part is that when you look at the movies, think about who the characters are that you most relate to, right? So in my case, it's not necessarily those heroes. I love those mentor characters, right? I love Gandalf and Morpheus and Katsumoto, the people who come alongside the hero, help them get skills, help them figure out that they're a hero, help them discover themselves, and then they go off and do great things, right? That's what I love to do. I love to find people and help them become heroes, right? And so knowing that really shows me what it is that I should be doing for work, right? It tells me you're going to be happy if you do this kind of thing because that's who you are. That's what you were built to do. So I just want to give you that little bit of a challenge. Take that home with you, or if you have a minute and you want to share your favorite movies, you're welcome to do that. We can put that in the chat or something like that. But think about who are those characters that really resonate with you, and what does that tell you about maybe what you should be doing in the future with your life? Okay, so that's what I have for you today. Hopefully, that was helpful to give you some idea of what choices to make in order to be successful as a student, right? As you go on. Hopefully, you got excited about maybe coming to school in the US, right? I mean, we're all here for that to help students be able to do that. And maybe you even got excited about Lynchburg and some of the things that I shared about that. And if so, I'd love to have you, reach out to me, ask me questions, let me know if there's information that I can get for you. I can always put you in touch with other students or those kinds of things to help you do that. So that's what I have for you today. I don't know if you have any questions that you want, but I'll stop sharing my screen and we can just talk if there are questions.
Yeah, so first of all, I just want to thank you so much, Aaron, for such an insightful presentation. I found it really interesting, and I think it's really helpful information for students to have to be thinking about their long-term success at universities. And so for any students, I highly recommend that you do follow Aaron's advice. I studied in the US, and truly having those layers of support and getting involved on campus really makes such a big difference for your experience and your future career as well. Do we have any questions on the call? Please feel free to speak up, to put it in the chat, and Aaron can answer. One question that I wanted to ask is, based on your experience, what do you find that international students wished they had known before arriving?
That's a great question. That's a great question. I think some of those basic things about support, like what we talked about with credits, right? That they just, I think there are a lot of things that people assume students know that international students don't know, right? Which classes do I take? I think the more that they understand about like what is the core curriculum, right? What are the classes that everybody needs to take, and why is that different than just taking classes in your major? Things like that, I think, are really helpful. Also, I think, getting to know like what's transportation like? Like, how do I get around? How difficult is it to come and go? Those kinds of things are really helpful. But I think, building that initial base of people, because you're always going to have questions that you don't know the answer to. No matter how well you prepare, there's always going to be something that comes up. And I think knowing who to go to and who to trust and who to get good information from, I think that makes a big difference. So I think the more that they can understand about the system, about advising and how that works, about taking credits and how credits work, about the general academic framework that we utilize in the U.S., I think that can be really, really helpful.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I definitely agree. And I see in the chat, how can you prepare for the adaptation process while still in your home country? Do you recommend making connections with people before arriving?
Absolutely. I think especially if your institution facilitates this, which a lot of times they do, like for example, with our team, we have a series of pre-arrival webinars that we do, right? And so you can sign up. It gives you a little bit of orientation. We tell you what to expect, and we leave it open so that you can meet other students that are in there, right? So you can ask questions of them and try to connect and make learn who they are, and start talking with them before you arrive. I think is a great thing. I would definitely do that. There are always those questions about English, depending on how strong the English level is, right? I find that with a decent level of English, it takes a couple of weeks. Everybody gets a headache the first week or two, right? And then it starts to pass and you start to feel, okay, it's more comfortable, right? Even if you've had a lot of English, what you don't know is the slang, right? Or the like normal everyday kind of talk. So it takes you a little while to get used to it. But I think, you can prepare by, again, listening to things, working on, active learning with the language. I think those are all really, key pieces. But yes, if you have the opportunity to connect with somebody before you go and at least know one person, or again, ask at the university and say, hey, do you have a current student who maybe I could talk to? We have people, for example, that work as tour guides in our office that are international students. And it's very common for us to have an international student that is thinking about coming, and we'll set them up on WhatsApp and they'll chat with somebody who's a current student. And I think they feel so much more comfortable after that, right? Because it's not me, the guy who usually wears the tie, right, who's talking to students. It's another student who went through that. And I think that can be really helpful.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Aaron.
Sure.
And our experiences to talking to Brazilian alumni really goes a long way with helping students understand what their experience is like and all the opportunities available.
That's
Are there
awesome.
any other questions? Okay, just one final question is, what are some common mistakes new students make and how can they avoid them?
Okay. Yeah, it's a great idea. Um, One of them I mentioned, which is like when you have a question, you only ask other students, right? Because other
Mm.
students don't know any more than you do. So don't do that, right? Go and ask somebody who actually knows what they're talking about. I think that can be really helpful. I do think it can be a temptation for international students to be isolated, right? To only talk with other students, right? If you come and you're only going to talk with other Brazilian students or only other talk with other international students. And I think getting out of that is really enriching, right? The more you can make friends from different places, the more you're going to enjoy your experience. It's amazing how, yes, you need some advice from international students at the beginning, but the more you actually make friends with domestic students in the US, the more opportunities are going to open to you. And it's kind of fun. I have found that among our students that it's very common for maybe for them to meet an American friend who their family kind of adopts them, right? Like, and pretty soon they're going back and forth and they're visiting and they become lifetime friends. And then afterwards they travel to visit. And you want to be open to that. So make sure you get out of that, area. And don't, and I think what goes with that as a corollary is don't only be with people who speak your native language, right? The less you speak your own native language, the faster you're going to learn to be comfortable with English. And I think I see that also, right? The students who are like, I'm not gonna speak Portuguese. I'm gonna, immediately start to, get going in English as fast as I can. 2 or 3 weeks, and they're totally comfortable. It's the people who like stay only with their Brazilian friends, right, to talk or those kinds of things. They're the ones who struggle more academically and with the language because they're not ready to make that jump. So I would say those kinds of things, right? Just get out of your shell, meet people, try to make connections, and I think those are the pieces that would probably help you the most.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that advice.
Of
And I
course.
can also say that as a student back in the US, I absolutely loved meeting international students. And I think that Brazilian students will really find that
Yep.
openness and when they go to the US. But are there any other questions? No? Okay, well, I want to thank you again, Erin. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing more about the University of Lynchburg and for also giving all that really helpful advice.
My pleasure. That was great. Good luck,
Thank
everyone.